minority people and indigenous peoples, and women are the people who are most impacted by climate change and by the policies driven by these parties. We cannot shut our eyes to the capitalist framework that still causes harm to our most vulnerable actors. We stand by the fact that as environmentalists, we want to prioritize the support for these green left parties as opposed to center left green parties, because we believe that is the only way for our policies and for our people to get to gather around and create better policies. A few points of model. First, we're going to act as environmentalists and people who care about the environment. We will constantly voice out our support for these green left parties. We'll constantly push to vote for them in the preliminaries, and we will still provide funding to these parties. And second point, we will not oppose the center left parties in the case that the green left parties lose the prelims. We will understand the concessions with our party exists. Even if our party doesn't get chosen, we will still support the center left green parties, and we believe that that is an okay model. And third, we will still prioritize the left green parties. However, we believe that this is more impactful to the vulnerable actors that we just explained. So our goal here is to have a to push for better policies while still being realistic about what policies that can be passed. But we also believe that the betterment of the vulnerable actors, for example, the indigenous peoples and the minorities in this enfranchised country, should still be integrated in our policies. So moving on to my arguments, I have two main arguments. First, on why green left parties are the best actor for our goals, and second, on why we will at the end of the day achieve more on our side. So moving on to my first argument, why green left parties are the best actor for our goal. We believe that that green left parties, especially because of their left wing principle, understands that there are unique issues uh, that uh, that people on the ground face, right? So they understand the intersectionality, that environmental issues don't exist in a vacuum. This means that they understand that people in developing countries, for example, still are having the brunt of of climate change. For example, like in the people in near the coastline are having rising sea levels, and this is not necessarily the problems that are being held by people in first world countries, for example. And secondly, the problem is that the center parties is capitalistic in nature, meaning that they will only gather the majority views, and they, for example, only see environmental issues like as a carbon, for example, carbon problem, not necessarily how the carbon problem actually manifests for the people having respiratory disease, and for the indigenous communities not being able to provide food from their rural communities at the end of the day. This privileged kinds of issue is not going to help the people who really need it, and we believe that the vulnerable actors here should be first prioritized, because these minorities are heavily reliant on their environmental surroundings to continue to live. And this is important because people that who do not rely on the environment to live have other basic have other basic mechanisms to turn to when there is climate change going on in the planet, right? So we believe that in comparison, we have to take into account the minority views of the problem, because when capitalistic framework reconciles with the fact that, for example, FMCG companies have to still mass produce disposable plastic containers, people and the capitalistic framework still in under the capitalistic framework, people can still be overworked for the benefit of the companies, for example. We believe that this is not something that we should prioritize at the end of the day, and we as environmentalists should prioritize the most ideal and most most valuable outcome at the end of the day. And we believe that the traction that is being had by environmental parties at the end of the day, and the environmental trends going on, will still push us further, and for it to be have better results in at the end of the day. And second, my second argument on why prioritizing this will help us achieve, why we'll still achieve more on our side. So we believe that prioritizing doesn't mean that we have to have the trade-off of these green centrist parties, right? We understand that in certain cases, green centrist parties might have a better traction with the middle ground. But however, we still believe that we must act according to our ideals as environmentalists by prioritizing them first, because when we are prioritizing these green left parties, we are actually shifting the Overton window from these centrist parties into a better and more left-leaning party at the end of the day, right? So we believe that we are able to target the middle ground better, because we are able to push for the normalization of the support of these kinds of parties. Because at the end of the day, even if we're not able to achieve our goal to push our parties into the general election, for example, we will still be able to support these green centrist parties, right? Because we understand that environmental policies might not be everyone's biggest priority at the end of the day. So even if we fail strategically in the preliminary, we will still be able to support them. And why is this actually okay at the end of the day? We believe that as environmentalists, as we have already tried our best to support the most ideal and most and the best actor for our goals. We still believe that at the end of the day, just like the U.S. politics, we still understand that we have to make concessions at the end in order for us to achieve our goals. And but at the end of the day, we believe that by still prioritizing the support, we will still achieve more and achieve better on our side, and we're still able to at least bring up minority issues and feminist issues at the end of the day. So we're proud to propose.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Through chat. Okay, I'll take any POIs from chat, at least one. So just ask away. Yeah, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So first things first, I'm just gonna have to clarify a few things. This debate is not about which party will get more votes, but which party should be prioritized in the fight for environmental concession. And we think we have to prioritize the Green Left because they need the votes eventually if we're gonna talk about those votes. First, responses towards OO. Let's talk about how they stated that the center left and the Green, they have agreements like the Green New Deal, progressive tax and social security things. And they talked about how the Green, how the center, or how the left-leaning parties are more likely to not care about economical policies in nature, or that these laws are what are the backbone of the movement itself. Now, firstly, how are those economical policies going to be the end all be all of this debate, ladies and gentlemen? They need to prove to us why that is so, and why the center left will have they need to prove to us why it is so, and why, under that side, center left will have the best intention and execution of those policies at the end of the day for the vulnerable actors in place. OG believes that no, this is not going to happen, and will prove it to you. I'm going to explain two things. First, why the Green Left is the best and only actor to provide policies to the vulnerable actors, and two, why the marginal benefits under OG is a more worthy and justified trade-off in comparison to OO. First, I'm gonna respond to one statement concerning about how the center left is much more attractive for voters. Ladies and gentlemen, as voters, people will be able to distinguish a party by their actions and branding. Yes, let's agree on that. We don't think the political agenda of politicians' electability is the focus of the debate here, but even if it was, as a politician with the political agenda of being elected, green left is still the way we go, because 90% of the voter base is not a multinational company looking for easy environment tax. It's people who understand that there are other people in need of prioritization. Green New Deal is popular not because it's economically beneficial for the voters. It's attractive because voters feel heard about those issues that they have been pushing for so long, but have seen so little movement in the eyes of other capitalistic parties. So under that side, these ideas that come from OO seem to have fallen. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're promoting here under OG is a humanistic approach, and yet an approach that will also be beneficial in the long run. Let's talk about my substantive. First, how principally the green left is going to be the best actor, and they will provide more specified policies that are not just blanket policies. And they're the only actor that will be able to do so under this debate. OO stated that the center will still care about minorities. And we say maybe, but it won't make much of a difference even if they do. And the economical policies that they come out with, that they think benefit people and the environment, usually hurt those minorities that we're talking about. Let's talk about the plastic straw ban, ladies and gentlemen, how that affected the disabled community and how it actually empowered metal and mining productions to fulfill the demand for reusable straws. We say that a blanket policy is bad, and a blanket statement or a blanket policy is the only thing that's ever going to come out from a center-left party, because what they're aiming for is a capitalistic view, ladies and gentlemen. We want as many people to agree on something, and to have so many people to agree on something, you have to give them the bare minimum effort of what they are allowed or willing to do. And we say that's not enough of a push to support the people who are actually in need on the ground, in the grassroots efforts that people would probably expect from these companies or from these parties. Now, other than how it marginally affects the needy, it also benefits the already wealthy. So we don't see the point in having to promote the center left under that side. The brunt end, as my first speaker has already stated, the poor, minorities who cannot defend themselves, who won't have the capacity to change otherwise, will still have to depend on these center left capitalist policies, and they won't ever be catered to at the end of the day. When they're relying on these center left parties with capitalistic ideas, it encourages the approaches that are still quantity above quality. It's not humane enough for us, and it's not sympathetic enough, and we don't think the support will be given in comparison. In comparison, under our side, some more support is a much needed thing and will be given. The problem with center left, again, is that they believe that a trickle down effect will happen from the wealthy, for example. Once you take the big goals, you can create more change. We think no. Several layers and response to this. First, no, it's harder to achieve those goals, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a worthy fight when there are still people in need of dire help still on the ground, and it's probably more easier to help those kinds of communities and empower those things. Secondly, those goals, even when achieved, is not a positive change on a structural root issue like lack of access or rights to the land that they have power over. Three, even if trickle down happens, it's so minuscule in amount and not direct enough to affect the quality of the environment or behavior of the people in the ground. And we want the people in the ground to have a behavioral change. Even in the worst case scenario, it might create a mental block for people to do environmental activism, worsening the progress of change in status quo presently with movements that are in line with the green left ideologies. Second, let's talk about the practical argumentations of this debate. Let's talk about how the only actor under this motion would still be green left, who is able to have the capacity to include minorities. Inclusion is important, and we're going to stress this again and again, because the inclusion of people and minorities or the vulnerable actors that don't just look at the money is because so that people have development, ladies and gentlemen, that they can develop in the future and have this sustainable change so that they can fend for themselves. And this is important so that in the future, we can bring all of society up to a point where we as society has tackled those kinds of grievances and we can move forwards towards a more center approach. The left party targets people immediately and pushes and triggers behavioral change in communities and empowers them and gives them the agency that they might have lost and acknowledges their issues are important. Yes.
If your problem is about development, and we have like enemies like right parties that actively wants you to not be elections, why do you think vote is not that important?
Right. What we're saying is if you're going to go in that direction, isn't it better to just take the extreme end of the stick and state where you stand per and state where you stand assertively? When you go and take the center route, ladies and gentlemen, you're basically saying that you are going to compromise with the people that might have already been disenfranchising you. If you're going to go and take a green party, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to take someone who is still going to agree with the policies coming from the very, very capitalistic parties. So what's the point of following through with a green commitment when you're just going to concede with the ideas that are already going to backlash with the ideas in line with that party, ladies and gentlemen? So in that sense, we're proud to propose. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, DPM. Next, I'm calling DL. You're here.
Hi, was I not audible? I thought I was audible. Sorry.
Yeah.
Am I clear? Hello.
You're pretty audible.
All right, I'll start in about 5. Is there a way for you to display the timer or something like that? Or should I set it up on my laptop? Hello. Hi.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, I'm okay. Should I set a time? Are you guys setting a timer on your own or okay?
I'm setting a timer, but you can have the timer on your own as well.
All right. And I just want to confirm. Thank you. I'll start in about 5, 4, 3. Okay. All right, panel. So firstly, and the most important thing to note about this debate is that on both sides of the house currently, you have a simple and misleading trade-off that you have been fooled into, which is that with center-left parties, you'll get political support and you will be able to compromise or whatever. And on this, with green left parties, you won't win any elections, so you can't do much, right? Secondly, the other misleading premise on which the opening half is sort of build their premise is a misunderstanding of capitalism, right? They have told you that capitalism is just like, okay, it makes the economy work, which is why voters will like it and so on, right? I think those are the basic premises on which the opening half is built their case. So first, actually, let's differentiate between the four characterizations that we've gotten in the first half of this debate, right? Firstly, OG comes and tells you that in their model, they will provide funding to green left parties. Haven't gotten any mechanization for that. That is not what we will take as support in this context. Secondly, they tell you that environmental activists are the only stakeholders in this debate. Also, not we will get to our actual stakeholders, right? Second, the opening opposition also gives you a number of different premises that I think you should consider as false. Firstly, they tell you that the main differentiator between center left and left parties is an agreement on the economy, right? Is a prioritization of whether you want to talk about the economy or whether you want to talk about the environment. That is not what we will be running on. The key differentiator in center left and left is the radical and is how significant a change you are proposing in terms of your policy, right? Secondly, they tell you that you can like in terms of what this ideology looks like, they haven't given you any definition. How the center left party gets into power, they haven't told you much about it. They have given you no mechanization as to what climate policy under both paradigms will look like, right? So let's just get to our stakeholder and characterization, right? So main stakeholder is the party in question, right? The party in question has three main motives, right? Firstly, as a party, needs to win elections. Secondly, as a broadly socially conscious left party, it wants to implement a broadly socially conscious agenda, right? What does a socially conscious agenda look like? It really looks like an agenda that caters to the interest of minority voters. It caters to the interests of feminists and stuff like that, right? And secondly, and most importantly, all of this stuff is incorporated within a broad critique of capitalism that treats capitalism as an exploitative framework within which this climate change happens, right? Because why is climate change happening and the structural reasons behind it is something that the Green Party understands, and which is why it wants to dismantle certain parts of capitalism, right? So the prioritization here is for A, political support, B, it's for getting into coalition with leftists and not just broad center parties, and thirdly, it's also about making sure that your base, which is your environmental activists, are also happy with your main performance, right? All right, in the current paradigm, what do all of these things look like, right? I think in the current paradigm, what the world looks like is one in which center left parties, even when they get into power, do simple lip service, because it's very easy to talk about how green your party is, how green your economic budget is, while at the same time not fundamentally changing anything about the economy, while fundamentally not doing anything about the environment, right? How do these center left parties get into power? They get into power by pandering to capitalist elites. They get into power by pandering to the broad notions of capitalism as a whole, right? And they compromise with their main ideology, right? So the perception of climate change that they also bring about is simply like a social cause that you should endure, as opposed to the fundamental structural change that you actually need to propose in this scenario, right? And finally, I will tell you why, and this is the crux of the case, which is uh, that a green left party not only is electorally viable, but is also going to but the substantive policy solutions it provides to the voters is why it will be popular, right? Why is this going to be the case? I'm going to provide you 5 different points as to why this is going to be the case. Firstly, why does lip service happen, right? So I think green center left parties, what they will do is that they will acknowledge climate change as a thing. They will say we are fighting it, but then voters don't actually care enough to hold these parties accountable for environmentalism, right? Or there is enough lobbying power from capitalist elites to make sure that they're never held accountable for whatever the center left party is doing, right? So the center left party has no incentive to actually put into place important climate friendly regulations, right? So they don't actually do a lot of things, right? At the end of the day, this leads to lack of accountability, because these parties are now accountable to people who hold power in society and not to actual masses of the voters, right? And secondly, what does this actually end up meaning, right? Because in terms of climate policy, what this ends up meaning is they don't do anything substantive because they don't want to ever get into they don't want to do anything radical, or B, even when they actually impose climate policy solutions, what they end up doing is they impose very conservative or market leaning policy solutions like a carbon tax or something, which doesn't actually get to the core of the capitalist structure, which actually is causing climate change, right? And why this secondly, this is electorally unpopular. Why is this electorally unpopular? Because at a point in time where you don't provide a fundamentally radical framework, you don't provide a proper alternative between the center and the center left. You don't provide an alternative between right-wing solutions to climate change and left-wing solutions to climate change, right? Voters are now, they actually lack an option, right? Especially this is 30% of the population is broadly left-leaning, right? So even almost every country. So this population will now feel that you're just simply taking their votes for granted, and you're not actually providing them with a proper alternative, right? Secondly, we look at the rise of populism in a lot of these countries, right? Why is populism rising? It's rising because center left parties have compromised into this sort of neoliberal capitalist framework, right? And now working class people are revolting against the sort of elitist behavior that center left parties have engaged in. We think that green left parties are in the perfect position to take advantage of this sort of political behavior. They can advocate for important solutions to workers' problems, and which is why we think they will actually win votes, right? Because let's talk about what co-opting into the capitalist frameworks look like. It looks like listening to lobbyists and listening to what actually matters to profit margins and not what happens to the environment. It looks like ignoring the power dynamics within which capitalism exists, right? You don't ignore the disparate power that different people hold in society, right? At that point in time, you opt into the neoliberal paradigm, and all of your policy solutions are limited to a certain sort of neoliberal framework, right? What does this lead to? It leads to non-tangible actual solutions to anything, right? And finally, why we think this is electorally popular, and this is our main point here, right? We think this is electorally popular mainly because when you appeal to minorities and you provide them with substantive solutions, minorities not a monolith, unlike what the opening opposition said. When you provide them with concrete solutions, they are much more likely to vote for you. Secondly, and more importantly, you can actually counter the rise of the populist right. How? Because if you actually advocate for workers, if you actually advocate for unions, you provide them with a proper solution, right? You don't provide them with just a carbon tax or green investment or green markets or whatever. You provide them with an actual solution in terms of spending a lot, borrowing a lot, and spending a lot on climate change, improving the economy by providing green jobs, by putting investment into the economy and making sure green energy transition happens. And all of these things are popular, right? Because these create jobs, these are union friendly jobs, and these jobs are going to be very popular with the voters, right? All of these things are very popular with the voters, and which is, I think, is going to be electorally viable as well, right? And fourthly, and most importantly, we think that's because of the way intersectionality works, a center-left party is not in any adequate position to take care of certain issues, right? What issues are we talking about? We are talking about issues where indigenous communities and corporations are in like conflict, right? Or where we're talking about like the disproportionate impact that women face due to climate change. I don't think a center-left party, because of who it's
Thank you, member of
relying on support
cabinet. I
for,
think you speak
for
more
all
than
of these reasons, we're
7:20.
extremely proud to propose. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. I would like to remind everyone to take a look at your timer and do not speak after 7:20. Cool. Next to open the case from closing opposition, I'm calling member of opposition here.
Okay. Wait a second. Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Unlike opening opposition that does not explain the urgency of the environmentalism, CO will be the only team that will explain to you why we should prioritize left parties because of the urgency that we have. Notice on how the world is dying right now, lots of places already drowning, even the case of global warming is growing day by day. We believe by our proposal, the structural problem of environment will be better to be minimized or even solved under closing opposition. Thus, we will take the burden to prove to you why the urgency is better under our side and we will solve the problem in the fast way. But beforehand, rebuttals toward closing government side of the house. Okay, closing government said that we are not going to create a sustained results into the case of environmentalism. We say no, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because what's going to be happen under our side of the house will be better. Why though? Because we put the burden into the right parties, ladies and gentlemen. Because look on how what's going to be happen under government side of the house is that they are scattered. You don't know how to prioritize certain issue, even if they are could prioritize which side that should be done first. We think the other problem will be taking a longer time and it is too late to solve the problem in the very first beginning. Thus, we do not we think under our side we will create a better sustained results because we only prioritize into one thing for sure. Going to my first argument. Why the campaign brought by Green Left only takes too much time that we cannot afford. Look, opening government said that the problem within the environment and social issues, that is something that going hand in hand. Therefore, we should prioritize those cases and we need to solve those cases first. Judges note that the campaign for social issues such minority, disabled people exists right now and it is always growing, just like what happened in status quo right now. The kinds of social movement is growing. Under our side of the house, those movement will with only one interest are taking this problem, ladies and gentlemen, as their prioritize on how that in the social movement we have Black Lives Matter, even to the extent those movement that stands for disabled people, not on how government proposal will only left certain issues that exist under their side of the house, that is exist not included in their interest, ladies and gentlemen. So what's going to be happening is that the problem within the environment is growing day by day. Damage has been there and we cannot wait any longer, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine if we should prioritize those kind of environmental problem with the social problem in one scene. What's going to be happen is that this kind of problem will be left out, ladies and gentlemen, even to the extent if they are want to prioritize this case, what's going to be happen? Their disabled people will be left out too, ladies and gentlemen. So what's going to be happen under our side of the house, ladies and gentlemen? Under government, under our side of the house, it will be better because we as environmentalists only put our focus on one thing, ladies and gentlemen. under government, it will taking so much time because of their prioritizing sin in their side of the house. And why this is taking so too much time? Because it is that what, because in their side of the house, the movement will be only responsible into certain issues that they think is urgent, that contains of two urgency in their or of two interests in their side of the house. But under our side of the house will be better because we only fight for something that is urgent to be fight for, ladies and gentlemen. Look, under our side, we will directly solve the problem as our interest. For example, like the environment in the very first beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's compare the benefit that exists under both sides of the house. Look, what's going to be happen under closing opposition side of the house is that we will solve the problem in a fast way, ladies and gentlemen. We don't need to wait which side that we will prioritize, because under our side of the house we have so much movement that will put their interest into different problem. Means what? Means the problem under our side of the house will be solved in the same way, like in the same time, ladies and gentlemen. And then also the results under our side of the house will be better. Why so? Because the moment when we focus on something that is become our interest, what's going to be happen is that we will maximize anything that is resulting regarding our interest in the very first beginning. Therefore, vote for CO. But then second of all, why under our side of the house we put the burden into the right party? Look, CG tap into this debate by saying the rise of population, by the rise of population and so on and so stuff. Look, we think the rise of population is also in the hands of the social movement in the very first beginning. Notice on how we put the right burden into the right party is because we put the burden into the party which has the interest in the very first beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Notice on how the moment under our side of the house, the moment when there is a case of minority people, the movement of Black Lives Matter, for example, will step into the front to campaign about this thing, ladies and gentlemen. The moment when there is a problem of disabled people that is got discriminated, those people who are in the same umbrella as them will be also step in front to campaigning and also to promote if there is a case of discrimination towards them, ladies and gentlemen. And therefore, it is this is the right way to campaign something that has become our interest in the very first beginning. And this is why we put the burden into the right party. Imagine on how that we put those kind of minority cases into environmentalist problem, ladies and gentlemen. We think there is no urgency. That should this environmentalists do in the very first beginning, because what would they do is that to prioritize another environmental things that is happen in the very first beginning, and therefore we to oppose this motion.
Thank you, member of opposition. Now to case the close from the government, I'm calling government to appear here.
Right, just give me 15 seconds, I'll start. Thank you. Right, perfect. Am I clearly audible?
Clear? Clear.
Perfect. Just a request. Could you just put in a timestamp at 5:30 because I'd like to take a POI from opening? That's possible. Instead of putting it at 5,
5:30. Yeah,
right,
I'll
at
leave this.
5:30. All right.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Right. All right. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, we feel the opposition falls out of this debate because the entire premise that the opening up and closing up is functioning is on a basic premise that is fundamentally problematic, is that they believe capitalism is a fucking piggy bank in which centrist left parties can bank onto for money, and now I can use this money to bring tangible change such as environmentalism and social justice. Panel will prove to you how that does not happen, right? Realize that the ideologies of green parties is the same for both centrist left parties and the left green parties. That is to say, so a social justice, that is to say, similar treatment of all stakeholders, irrespective of their economic status, right? That is to say, a rich or a poor will be treated in the same way, which is social justice, which is the major issue. All right, is the audio breaking? All right, just wait. Is the audio breaking? Was I not clearly audible? I just stopped my timer. Can somebody confirm?
Yeah, it's audible, but it's breaking like a lot of static.
All right. Okay. I've held my mic in a particular position. Can you just confirm, because I'm saying a long sentence? Is it still breaking?
Yes.
All right. Just a
Okay.
second.
Thank you.
Just a second.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Right. I've just put up another head. Headset. Is it better now? All right. I'll just say a long sentence. Is the voice better now?
It's better, but it's still breaking. I feel like we're using headphones or something.
Yes, I am. Should I keep them? Okay. Is it better now? I think I was close to.
Okay, this
too
one
close
is
to the
better.
mic. I got it. All right. It's because I was too close to the mic. All right. I'll just start again if that's not an issue. I just was 10 seconds into my speech, I guess.
Sure.
All right. Perfect. All right. Starting again my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel realized that that OO and CO both fall out of this debate because the entire fundamental problematic premise that they're running on is that capitalism is a piggy bank in which a centrist left party can bank into for funds, and then it can very conveniently go ahead and use these funds to bring social justice or to bring environmental solutions. We believe that is fundamentally problematic. Why? Panel realized what are the core ideologies of green parties, which are same for both centrist left parties and left parties, is a social justice. That is to say, similar treatment of all the stakeholders, irrespective of their economic status. That is to say, a rich person or a poor person will be treated in the same way. That is what these green left parties stand for. First, second, environmentalism. That is to say, at any point of time you do any work, make sure that the environment, you protect the environment on your hand. Third, feminism, that you ensure that the women and men are treated equally. Realize, panel, that these core ideologies are very antithetical to the very idea of capitalism itself. Right? At a point of time, realize capitalism essentially functions on there is a bourgeoisie which goes ahead and produces for the entire nation, and there are people who have to work to earn that money for these rich people. At that point of time, the very social justice concept, which is the core ideology of this left party, something that is not fundamentally present in capitalism to begin with. At that point of time, realize if these at the point of time when opposition tells you, oh, they will take this money, and when they harp on this idea of money talks, that money will alleviate suffering of all minorities, ensure progressive taxation system or environmental rules, I do not understand what will be the incentive for these capitalist coalitions to go ahead and ensure progressive taxation system. Right? That is to say, that is like Jeff Bezos saying, oh, I want to tax myself more. Why will that happen is something that we do not understand. Right? Again, realize, panel, at the point of time, how do the centralist parties come into power? And that is something that the opposition co-opts into. Right? That is to realize that the centralist parties will come into power by co-opting into a capitalist narrative. That is to say, they will co-opt into with these capitalists which have the power and then come together to form that party. At that point of time, realize that they're essentially working under the capitalist narrative itself. Right? they will stop capitalists to come into power. It is for A, realize that it is that they have to of the core ideology, but realize this pandering will lead to them, the capitalists, taking the decisions. At that point of time, we do not understand. I'll just stop. Okay, I've held my time. I'll just stop my time. I mean, is it still lagging? Is the voice
I think
lagging?
it's still
Is
fine.
is it like that for
It
everyone?
looked lagging for like 3
All right,
seconds
all
and then
right,
you're back, so I think it's fine.
all right. I'll just continue, right?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Realize at that point of time, panel, that the central left parties have to well, first of all, go ahead and pander to these capitalist parties to come into power. We do not understand how do these O and CO who harp about this tangible change will actually come about, right? At that point of time, realize, what do we tell you, panel? Panel, realize that at the point of time, you go ahead and focus on these central left parties as opposed to leftist parties. Realize that the adherence to the very ideology becomes hazy, right? Realize that the central left parties now will use this ideology not as an end in itself, but simply as a means to get into power, right? That is to say, the level of tangible change that CO tries to harp to you about will never come across, because they realize that this, once they come into power, once the central left party come into power, it is essentially working under a capitalist framework. At that point of time, why do they believe that these capitalists will go ahead and force and like put money in social justice or the alleviation of minorities when it will harm themselves only? Something that we do not understand, right? Realize, panel, at a point of time, we go out of our left parties, realize that they are strict to their ideologies. When we say that we are radical, that does not mean, oh, people will see we're radical and they will not vote for it. Realize that these left parties do not compromise on their ideologies, panel, and this is a trade-off that you have to adjudicate upon, right? Realize the left parties stay with their ideologies. That is to say, they will push for social justice, they will push for environmentalism, they will push for feminism. Right? At that point of time, when CO comes to and talks about urgency and tells us, oh, that there will be no urgency in our paradigm because left parties are focused on certain problems only. And what do these problems look like? These problems look like social justice, feminism, environmentalism. But really, at a point of time, we co-opt into their narrative. The party that you're essentially functioning under is basically a party that is only pandering to the rich people of the economy, because that's what a fucking capitalist party looks like, right? At that point of time, realize that when they give you the mechanization, oh, there is a Black Lives Matter movement happening in the USA. Finally, realize that this Black Lives Matter is happening in the very first place because of the structural injustices to the blacks, and that is the very reason for that is the fucking capitalist setup in the USA. At that point of time, realize if you go ahead and co-opt into a left party and they treat all the people and the minorities in the very same way, there will be no need to go ahead with these social movements such as feminism, etc. We are not saying that will solve all the problems in the world essentially, but realize that the propensity for tangible change in terms of these social issues is much higher in our paradigm, because there is no tangible change in their paradigm. They basically assume that we'll get the money and then you can spend the money on anything, right? And we don't believe that's true, right? Because it's antithetical to the wage. And I'll take you over before 6. What do we tell you, panel? Panel, first we tell you that it will lead to the ideology becoming hazy. Second, we tell you that there will be a focus on lip service. That is to say, these central left parties have to pander to the capitalists to get into power. At that point of time, realize there will be a lip service to the people that, oh, we'll provide all the rights and we'll provide social justice just like the capitalist parties do. But realize at a point of time when they come into power, such as the GOP in USA, what happens is again that your minorities, such as the Latinos, your blacks, again get fucked, because there is no incentive for these capitalist parties to pander them once they come into power, right? That is to say, this leads me to the third concept, that the propensity for tangible change, panel realize, is negligible, null in their side of the house, because there is no incentive for this capitalist party to go ahead and affect this change in the very first place. But in our paradigm, realize that these leftist parties are going in pandering to not the rich people, but to these people who are from a socially lax social class or an economically lower level. At that point of time, when they're pandering to the poor people, when they're pandering to women, when they're pandering to minorities such as blacks, Latinos, etc., at that point of time, realize the traction that they get in order to come on power is much higher on our side of the paradigm. And realize after they come to power, the propensity for them to actually get the tangible change much higher before that SPY. Right? Oh.
When the whole world operates in a capitalism a capitalism framework, and the majority of grey voters actually cares for the economy, are you okay with sacrificing these kinds of voters?
Okay, panel, at a point of time when O tells you that entire world functions like the capitalism, first is a farcical statement. Right? Realize that it is not the capitalist. If that is not necessarily because USA is a function of the capitalist framework, everybody in USA likes that framework, right? The very reason why Trump was called out because he's an ultra capitalist that only panders to the rich and tells the poor to fuck off, right? At that point, realize that majority of the people in USA are not happy with the capitalist framework to begin with. At that point of time, when you go ahead and enact a green left policy, which focuses on social justice, which focuses on prosperity of all the people, irrespective of the differences, at that point of time, the traction that you will get is much higher than this capitalist party. And that is why the Democrats came into power, because their basic agenda is to provide that social justice that GOP never focused to, right? At that point of time, realize the propensity of tangible change is much higher in our side of the house. More importantly, realize that the traction that we'll get is much higher outside of the house as well, because rather than now pandering to that 1%, we're pandering to all the population and ensuring them social justice and environmentalism. The center left parties would never, even if it's in their manifesto, and will only be a lip service now, because they essentially go out and have to pander to that capitalist favor to get into power. And these capitalists have really literally no incentive to provide social justice, because ideologically that's antithetical to capitalism to begin with. We do not understand how they bring that tangible change outside of ground. And we tell you there's higher propensity of tangible change outside of the minority support is higher. We tell you that there is differentiation, that we tell you that prioritization will bring this ideological importance to this right on. For those reasons, we're very, very proud to propose.
Thank you, member of government whip. Now to close the debate, I'm calling opposition whip. Here.
Am I audible?
Here.
All right, give me 1 second. All right. If there's any problem with my speech, whether there's lost connection of my voice is unclear, please just tell me directly. And if there's any POI, please write it down through the chat. Thank you. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, this debate is not talking about which one is a basic proposal and which one is not. We need to see in this debate that we need to support which one is giving a tangible benefit and which alternative is highly likely to be happen, right? That's why closing opposition will take this debate that we are going to support, we are going to prioritize support to the center, left, green parties. But beforehand, we think that opening government is how stands in this debate, right? They are always stuck within the idea on, a green left party is good, but center left green party is good, which is not inherently important in this debate, right? But opening opposition files to prove you on how then under the set of the house they could bring a better and tangible results, to begin with, right? But closing government tap into this debate by saying on how capitalism is highly unlikely to that they won't support capitalism and so on and so forth, and they think that supporting green left parties will be better, but we don't think so, right? Closing opposition will take this debate by saying on how we are going to support for the party that provides the bigger urgency, and the party that their agenda are highly likely to be heard by the government system. But all my rebuttals will be intertwined in my substantive. But first of all, right, which support able to solve the environmental problem better under the status quo. They say that capitalism is inherently not in line with environmentalism. First of all, we say no, right? Look, we agree that capitalism is indeed they want to generate in profit and so on and so forth, but we think that that's completely okay, right? Because of how those kind of profit that being dreamed by those capitalism are also impacted with the environment condition, also impacted connected with how the environmental look like under the status quo. That's why in the end of the day, the carbon tax, for example, green technology, for example, could run under the status quo is because the center-left green parties that are able to lobby the government to impose this agenda, right? And how these center-left green party, for example, are able to make this government, for example, or this government or company, for example, to understand on how on how they would not gain any profit, for example, if they want to agree with the environmental agenda that we impose under that this party impose under the status quo, right? Because look, if you're talking about because look, center-left Green Party know how to lobby the government, how to push the government or big company to opt in into mitigating climate change. Because the narrative that center-left Green Party said is exactly climate change could be solved through economy and would bring economic benefit in the end of the day. So we think that the benefit that the agenda push, even if it's through capitalism, it will still benefit the environmental condition, right? Thus, the likelihood is still going to be better under our side, right? But comparatively, under the side of the house, the moment they prioritize support for green left parties, for example, is that the moment the moment it's going to be so hard for them, for example, to lobby the government or to lobby those big companies, for example, because look, even if you provide a lot of campaign, less straw, for example, less plastic waste, for example, and so on and so forth, it would be useless, ladies and gentlemen, if those government and the company would not take action, ladies and gentlemen. Because look, if you're talking about environmental and or climate change, we talk about human life. We talk about the survivability of the people. Land are drowning, forests are burning. Thus, we need a bigger result, for example, on how we're going to solve this problem, right? Because thus we will support the party that provide a better solvency, which is to suppose a center left green party. Because look, comparatively under the set of the house, the moment they support green left parties, ladies and gentlemen, is that the moment it's going to be hard for them, for example, to lobby the government. It's going to be so hard for them to lobby the economical system because of how they are disagree with the capitalism to begin with, like what closing government already told you, right? But second of all, they never take their burden on why then, even if their agenda is not supported by the government or company, then it's going to be completely okay, like what Bella already told in her speech, right? Because Bella told you on how under our side of the house, even if we are agree with the capitalism, even if we are impose our agenda by using the capitalism, we think that the benefit is inherently still on our hand. But second of all, we think that the likelihood is still going to be better. Is still going to be better under our side of the house, right? Because look, under our side of the house, we provide a bigger urgency toward this government and this company to begin with, on how they will never get, on how this government or company, for example, would never get a bigger profit if the environment is broken to begin with, right? That's why under our side of the house is going to be better. But why closing opposition need to win in this debate? First, need to win in this debate. First of all, closing opposition is the only team that told you on how under our side of the house we are going to support prioritizing support for center-left green parties because of how they provide a bigger urgency and how because of a bigger urgency on how people are on how the land is starting the earth is starting to die. So we need a better and we need a faster solvency that could only be given by this governmental and company system, and how we are going to prioritize support for the center-left green parties because of how their agenda are highly likely to be heard by the government and the company because it is exactly inherently going to give profit for them. Thus, they want to hear us. That's on those reasons we probably oppose this motion.
Cool. Thank you everyone for the debate. Please wait for several minutes for me to make my decision and please stay in this